Welcome back to the Sunday Footy Show. It is now time for Inside the 10 as I welcome Brent Reid, Gus Worland and Andrew Webster. Great to see you all. Gus, I feel like we've been at every single game together this week.
We have.
We have. But we're going to start off with, there's some breaking news involving Parramatta Eels player Dylan Brown. Can you tell us just what has happened?
Well, he's been charged by police with 5 counts of sexual touching after an incident at the Golden Sheaf. You'd know it better than me, Webby, in the eastern suburbs.
I know the tab section.
So, obviously it's now before the courts and we'll see how it plays out. But I don't think it's a mandatory stand-down. So the NRL and Parramatta will have a decision to make there as to whether they allow him to keep playing. But obviously, they were on a bye this weekend. He's obviously gone out and now this is emanated from that, so it's a worry. It's a worry for the game and obviously a worry for Parramatta.
Yeah, and he was taken to Waverley Police Station and was released on bail as well with a court date.
Let's not forget the victim in this as
well.
Of course, we don't
yes.
know all the situation yet, but I've got a couple of daughters. I certainly don't want that happening to them, so let's make sure we look after them.
And I'm sure there'll be more on this story in the coming days. But let's start off with another topic. Peter V'landys wants a team in Papua New Guinea by 2026. Do we like this idea? And if we do like it, how would it work?
Well, I like the concept of expansion and going to 18 teams. I don't think a PNG team can stand on its own. I think it's got to be part of a merged entity of some kind, be it with the Bears or with the Firehawks. I think East in Brisbane. I knew they'd play 6 games maybe at PNG and then 6 games at either in Sydney if it was the Bears or 6 games in Brisbane if it was Eastern Suburbs. I don't think a standalone team can work. Even if it's based in Cairns, I think that's unrealistic. I don't think you play 10, 12 games a year in PNG, but certainly 6 I think, it is the only country in the world where rugby league's a national sport. And they love it.
The whole genesis of this is the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, thinks there's a strategic advantage in having a team in Papua New Guinea or in that region. I think Peter V'landys is shrewdly looking ahead at it because if he thinks the federal government can kick in a lot of the cost and cover a lot of the start-up costs of having a team there, that's where I think PVL's thinking. I'm like you, Reedy. I think it's a great principle in theory. I'm just wondering how that looks. Yep. And where it sits. Like, is North Sydney the logical fit for it? I don't think so, to be honest. Is a third team in Brisbane? Probably more likely. I agree it wouldn't work so much in Cairns, but I think logistically, and if they have this idea of them going to other Pacific Island nations and playing, logistically that is very hard in the space of a 26-week NRL season. Yeah,
and Port Moresby is not exactly the safest city in the world either. People that I've spoken to have been done Kokoda. They spend a night in PNG. It's pretty much in your resort and that's it. There's no wandering around like you would on a normal holiday. So a lot of safety issues have to come into play too for people that want to play there and base themselves there as well. So I can see the theory behind it, but it's going to be tough to make it happen.
Well, we've had tours that have gone to Papua New Guinea. Webby, you don't think that a team could be based in Cairns but then play games out of Papua New Guinea? Why don't you think that could work?
I just don't think Cairns is probably the right... I don't think it's big enough. No disrespect to the people of Cairns, but if you want to be a strong NRL team, then I just think... And I think logically, Brisbane, the west of Brisbane is just exploding population-wise, much like the west of Sydney. I think you need to fish where the fishes are to some degree.
Dave Gallup,
like
one of Dave Gallup's
favourites.
I mean, we've seen the success of the Dolphins in Brisbane, having another team there, and I certainly think that city's big enough it could house another team as well. And then you'd have potentially more than one game of footy there every weekend. I mean, that's logical for me. You have a team in Brizzy or a team that plays some games in PNG that's based in Brisbane. You can have a much better chance of attracting players if you're based in Brisbane than if you're in Cairns. I think that's a big issue you've got to look at because you saw the difficulties the Dolphins had with getting players and they're in Brisbane. Can you imagine if the team was in Cairns, how much harder that would be? You certainly can't have a team in PNG based in PNG because you would not be able to attract players. And that's important. You've got to be competitive from day one.
Cairns is a beautiful place.
It is a great spot.
Yeah. It's not quite big enough.
Yeah. There are so many options. I mean, we were even speaking about it in the ad break before. You could even do, I think Joey was suggesting even a team in the South Island of New Zealand. There are so many options that we can look at for expansion.
Well, I reckon down the track that will happen. We'll go to 20 teams at some point and there will be a second team in New Zealand at some point.
All right, moving on. Another week of Dragons drama. Is Shane Flanagan the answer as their new coach?
Why are you looking at me?
You're the
You're a
Dragons man.
passionate.
We should have just a segment about the Dragons every week. When we're doing the list today, it's like, what, are we really going to talk about the Dragons again? I think it was, I don't know, really. Maybe.
Mate, you're paid to have an opinion on it.
I know, but
You
I've had an
can't sit
opinion,
throw
so
your
many
hands in
opinions
the
on what
air.
the Dragons should do. I've run out of
Because you
opinions
get
on
so
it.
frustrated.
I do.
There's one thing I can work out is that
What should we do?
they need to have total control, whoever that coach is. Spoke to Paul McGregor this week and he said it didn't work for him, no matter how much he loved it, because he always felt like he had to go to someone else for some permission. So just give him or her, whoever that person is, full reign to run
They did
everything.
That, Gus. They did it with
To who?
Anthony Griffin. He got half the old. He brought in. It was like he was coaching an over 35s comp. Had all these older players come in, and they all end up going. They're playing money ball without the good players. It didn't really work. So, they gave him some control. I think it's more important what they do in terms of their football department. Am I going mad? I feel like I've said this 4 weeks in a row. That's where it's got to start, at the top of the chain.
As in
but
bringing
they need to make a
someone-
decision. But the thing that I find maddening from a Dragons fan's point of view is that they're now in the same position that they were when they got rid of Paul McGregor. They don't have really an option. They're going to be left trying to find whatever coaches available out there, even though he might not be the right person for the job. I just can't believe a club of this standing can be just fumbling around the dark for the last 10 years, ever since Wayne Bennett left the joint.
I mean, I think that they've got options, Webby, obviously. It's just...
Not many.
No one... Well, they've got a few. I mean, Ben Hornby, Dean Young, Shane Flanagan, Michael Maguire's out there. There are people who can do that job. I mean, for me, Flano's the obvious one. He's been there, he played there, he knows the club, he's won a comp. But, again, you need... Flano's not the sort of guy who's going to be dictated to by other people. Flano's going to want to run the show, because that's what he did at Cronulla. And they've got to be willing to give that to him. And when you've got a split board, and a board... the board was unanimous on Rolsey. They're not unanimous on Shane Flanagan.
No.
And that's a big issue, because you've got to be unanimous at this club. Otherwise he can't be the coach. So that's going to be the big hurdle where Shane's concerned. And if they find they can't be unanimous on Shane, they end up going with another coach, so they go with Dean Young.
That's what they put above it, though. If they go
Well,
with
they need
Dean
a head
Young,
of footy.
They
I think
need
we
a head
all
of
know
football, but where?
Well,
They're not easy to get either.
No. Well, there are some out there, but they can't seem to agree on them either.
No, I know.
There was an interesting article that I read this week, and it was discussing about whether the NRL should come in and help the Dragons in their position. Is that something that needs to happen, or is that something that you can't
They're a
see
long
happen?
way off that. When they've done it with the Knights and the Titans and West Tigers, it's because they were in financial issues. Like in the Knights case, they took the licence off Nathan Tinkler. Like they're a long way off that. They're still well funded.
Would the egos at the Dragons allow that as well?
I've said it numerous times on this panel and written it in the Herald. Like, at some point, that Dragons board, whether they like each other or not, have to work together. Otherwise, they might as well just fold the whole thing up and give it to somebody else.
The NRL can't come in and tell them who to appoint as a coach. I mean, that's insane. I mean, you can't have that happening. So, but Webby's right. I mean, it's happened in the past when there's been financial problems, but they're actually really well run financially. Money's not an issue down there. The issue is just getting everyone on the same page. And the NRL, how can the NRL do that?
I just like it sorted before next week's show.
Good
No,
luck.
then we'll
Can't
discuss.
talk about it anymore.
Then we'll talk about the appointment, whether it was a good appointment.
And then bag it.
Who do you see as the?
I mean, Flanagan seems to be the guy that, has been there and done it. He's won a comp down in that region and so forth. He's out there at the moment. Why not give him a crack at it? But, as people have said, give him full 100% control. Give him a chance of doing it. Because at the moment, it's just, like Webby said, it's a basket case.
It must be frustrating. I feel for Dragons fans. I do feel for.
It's hard, Danica.
Mate,
hard.
you still beat the Roosters, so,
We did, actually. We did.
Yeah.
All right, well, and
Roosters.
obviously State of Origin at the moment, and this is always going to be a topic after a side loses. New South Wales, do they need to make mass changes? What is the discussion?
Not mass. Yeah, get rid of Fittler. I get rid of Alexander. I get rid of Johns, Tedesco. No.
Can we just say
a
right
little
off...
bit of tinkering, that's all it needs.
Right off the top, this Teddy talk is absolutely ridiculous. Captaincy, best fullback in the game. Sure, he wasn't absolutely on point. He hasn't been this year, but he's quality. So can we just stop that chat straight away? And if there's the odd
Webby,
person...
can you stop that chat?
Now, listen, let's clarify
stop
this.
writing about
this
it, Webby?
This shows you that another Telegraph beat up. So it was the Telegraph who called for him not to be there. I had 2 paragraphs at the bottom of a 800-word piece saying he played his hand too much in that game, and Reddy says that I'm trying to get him sacked. I didn't say that at all.
I think it's
So get your
talk of
facts
Teddy
right.
being sacked.
Get your facts right before you start throwing it
insane.
around.
It borders on insanity.
Yeah, it
honestly.
really does.
It's one of the maddest things I've ever read. He's the Australian captain. When the season started, we thought he was the best player in the game. He's had one average game and everyone goes, get rid of the guy.
It wasn't that
It's
average anyway.
insanity.
Not average.
But that's the first thing.
Trying to do too much.
So Latrell comes back in if he's fit, so that's a change straight away. But I thought Crichton was one of our better players for New South Wales too. So in Freddie we trust. A couple of little changes, few tinkers. We go up there to Queensland, we give it to them.
The claws are out here on the lounge.
Good luck.
Jeez.
Good luck with that, buddy.
I don't like being,
Billy, we
I don't
trust.
like being misrepresented
Misquoted.
with what I've said.
Stand up for yourself.
Maybe
Webber.
happy to
read it,
misrepresent you
mate.
anytime.
Read the
Happy to
story.
misrepresent-
Otherwise, you're just a Twitter troll, okay?